Hi, some time ago I made this card and it was going to be a project that I actually never got round to posting, and a few people saw it on my desk when I was doing some live streams and asked how I made it and if I'd show how to recreate it. So in this video I'm going to show you the process that I went through to make this particular card. First of all, I started off by finding a royalty-free image, and I actually got mine from graphic stock, but there is a shape directly on the machine, or at least there is on the CM900. I don't know whether it's on every machine, but if you've got this shape, then you can just bring it into Canvas and use it. So I'm going to go to the image tracing icon, which is up here, and select that. I'm going to come to choose file. I've got this saved on my desktop at the moment, so I'm just going to navigate to that, bring it in, wait for the software to show it on screen, and then I'm just going to drag these handles in a little bit just to isolate the design. And I'm going to say OK. I don't really need to preview it because it's a fairly simple shape. So as you can see, it's coming quite large. So I'm going to drag a corner and drag it smaller. And I'm just going to leave it sat there for now. So then I came to the text, and the font that I chose was this one here, the one that's got like the whole kind of fat bubbly type thing. I think it's called Ecuador. So I selected that, double clicked at the end of this T to get the flashing cursor, and then I just used the delete key on my keyboard to get rid of the text, and then I typed my word lucky in capital letters, and then I just selected I clicked on the desktop just to deselect the text and select the word. Now, as you can see, the bounding box extends well above and below the text. So although down here it's telling me this is 2.6 inches high, that's not the height of the text, that's the height of this box. So the first thing I'm going to do is right click and hit divide. Then I'm going to select the C because I don't need it and hit delete on the keyboard. Then I'm going to select these two letters, and using the directional arrows on my keyboard, I'm just going to move them over a little bit, and then I'm going to size this down to see how it looks within my letters. So I'm going to move the U by using the directional arrows on my keyboard until it overlaps this L. And then I'm going to move the K to the right using the directional arrows so that overlaps the Y. And then I think I might leave this design about this height. And then what I didn't want when I made the original card, I wanted my card to sit flat on the desk. If I left it like that with this tail, then this tail comes below the letters, so it would be wonky when it sat. So I rotated it just to get this tail on a level with the bottom of the card, if that makes sense. And then this overlaps the U now, so I'm going to just select these two letters, and using the arrows on my keyboard, bring that over until it overlaps the design. So everything overlaps each other. I could make this bigger if I wanted to, but I'm going to probably resize it in a few minutes anyway. So for now, I'm going to leave it like that. I'm going to drag an imaginary box around everything. And I'm going to go to Edit, Weld, and weld all that together. So that is now one design. I'm going to, the width is 8.33, which I'm going to take down a bit. Might make it 6.75 or thereabouts, but the height is only just over 2 inches, so I'm going to drag it up a bit, make it maybe 3. So that's what I started with for my design. Now, with it selected, I'm going to come to the properties box and I am going to make it a draw line, and then I'm going to choose a dashed pattern, and I'm going to choose this one here. Then while it's selected, I'm going to go to Edit, Offset, and I'm going to make it a 0.08 outward offset around the outer edge only, and I'm going to say OK. So what I'm going to do with this one now, so this offset line I'm going to assign as a cut line and leave it as a straight cut line. Effectively what I've got now here, if I bring this back up, I've got this green piece of paper. So I've got the cut line, which would cut it out, and I've got the dashed faux stitching line. So I want the outer edge, which I'm just going to drag off. And then with this outer edge selected, I'm going to go to Edit, Offset, and I'm going to make it, I can't remember what I did, I'm going to try 0.08 for a minute and see what happens. Yeah, so that's fine. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to get the smaller one and put that back over here. Select both of these, Edit Center and Edit Middle, and right click and group. So that's the coloured paper part with the faux stitching. Now, this layer is 0.08 bigger than this outer edge. So if I change this to green, hopefully we might be able to see it better. And if I zoom in, you can see that this green line is bigger. So this green line is going to be the faux stitching for the next layer. So I'm just going to go back to map. Hopefully it will all make sense. So that's the one I want. So I'm going to make this now a draw dashed line. So back to the properties box, make it a draw line and choose the dash line. With it selected, I'm going to go to Edit, Offset, and do another 0.08 offset of that layer on the outward and say OK. And that should be the one that should be selected. So while it is, I'm going to come to the properties box and I'm going to make it a cut line and just a regular straight cut line. Now for some reason it's changed both. So I'm going to select it, move it to one side, make it a cut line, make it a straight cut line, and then just double check that this is a draw. No, so it's changed it. So this needs to be a draw line with dash lines, and this is a cut line with straight lines. I'm going to select both again, Edit Center and Edit Middle, and that puts them two together. Now, before I group them, I'm just going to get the outside shape, which is the cut line, and I'm going to right click and hit duplicate. Now I'm going to select these two and group them. So right click and group, or you can go edit group, whichever is your preference. So that's the two layers. This one is the one I cut in the green paper. That's the one I cut in the black card. Don't know if you can see it, there's a black edge around there, and that's the card. And this one, in a minute, is now going to be the actual shape card. So if we put that on top of there to keep it out of the way. Now this one, I'm going to do another offset. So Edit, Offset. This time I'm going to use 0.12 to get me a bigger offset line. And I'm going to say OK. Drag the bigger one to one side get rid of the small one and hit delete. Now this one, I'm going to right click and duplicate, and then I'm going to hold the shift key down and rotate it all the way around and position it above this one. And then while it's in position, before I do anything, I need to flip it, because this is the word, this would be the L and this would be the Y. And at the moment, the Y's here and the L's here. So I need to flip it horizontally. So I'm going to go to Edit and Flip horizontally. And now I've got the two where the Y's will be lined up together. So I'm just going to select both pieces and center them to each other. And I've got an overlap here. And while they're selected, I'm going to go to Edit, Weld. And that makes the base card. So if I put a black line around that, hopefully it'll be easier to see. So this is the shape card, this is the front, this is the back. Then you've got the green layer that sits there, and this I cut in black card, and I added a white dashed faux stitching line. And then this one I cut in green paper and added a black stitch line. And if I just zoom in, hopefully you can see that better, and you can see how they all nest together. Now, if I drag an imaginary box around everything and right click and make this a group, you can see now that the total height of this card is 6.87, but obviously it won't be that high because that's the front and the back, so it's going to be half of that. So it's going to be just under 3.5 inches high, and it's about 7.5 inches wide. If you want to make it bigger or smaller at this point, while it's a group, just drag it out or in, and it will size in proportion while it's a group. Before you save it, ungroup it. So right click and ungroup, and then separate your three parts. So you've got your shape card, and then you've got your two layers. And then save it, then you can download it to your machine and cut the layers as you wish. Now for the little pot of gold, let's bring this back in again. Don't know if you can see this, but I thought I'd add a little pot of gold. And the way I made that was just in basic shapes. So I went to the basic shapes and I got this scallop circle, and then I got a square. That's not a square, is it? That's a scallop. So I took a square and I positioned the square over this shape at this point here. And with the square on top, I selected just these two and went to Edit, Subtract, and that chops that scallop in half, and that was what I cut in gold card for like the money for the pot of gold. Then to make the pot, I used an oval, and I chose this round fat one. And then all as I did with this, I sized it so it was slightly wider than this scallop shape by just dragging it out, because I wanted to be able to glue this scallop shape behind the oval. So I squashed it down and just dragged it out ever so slightly so that it overlaps here, and that way I had a good gluing section for gluing this on. And then to make, don't know if you can see this, but there's an extra piece here. So basically all as I did there, I got one of these rounded, I think I used this one. Oh no, this one here. So I chose that, and I wanted it to just sit over this section here. So basically I put it over and I squashed it up and squashed it in until it fitted just over, and that way I was able to put it on with 3D foam as an extra layer. I selected those three, right click and made them a group, and once they were a group, this smallest layer here is the front layer of my card, the one I cut in the pattern paper. So I sized this down until it looked as though it would be in proportion to this layer, and that's all I did. And when I was happy with how I thought it was going to look, I ungrouped it and separated the parts. And then if you look here, I've got dashed lines around this. I just put those on by hand because I wasn't sure whether I was going to leave this plain or not, so I didn't bother to apply the dash lines. So then I just made sure everything was within the mat, saved it, give it a name, saved it, and I downloaded it and cut it. And when you go to the machine, because you've assigned draw lines and cut lines, when you load your mat up, like say with pattern paper for this layer here, when you click draw, it will only draw the dash lines. And once it's finished, without unloading your mat, you take your pen out, put your blade in, and you hit cut, and it will then cut around what it's just drawn for you. I'll give you a closer look of the card at the end of this video. Please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe if you don't already do so. Make sure you've got the bell notification icon switched on your YouTube, and that way you'll get notified when I post any videos or when I'm doing any live streams, and if you're available and you want to tune in. Okay, thank you.